Oh, another auspicious start to the podcast. Yes, it is. So, anyway, this is Mac to the Future number 6, and this one is called Updated Ish. And the reason why it is called Updated Ish will be will be obvious in just a little bit. Thank you all for everyone who is currently here. I don't see any comments yet, so I don't know. Well, it looks like there's 3 people. There are 3 people that are currently watching. If you could all sign in and let me know who you are. Couple of changes. If you see behind me, I finally got some drapes up. So, yeah, you're not going to see the reflection off the monitors and off the back of my head. Um, Let's see. We got Ed, we've got Eileen, and we have David Ginsburg. Hey, thank you all so much for being here. There's a 4th person. I don't know who you are yet. We'll see. We'll see. Don't know how long this show is going to be tonight, and I'll tell you why. My wife has been out of town since last Tuesday. She went down to visit her, or not really down, it's more like moving across. She went down to see her mother, who lives in Boise, Idaho, and she's coming back tonight, Eastern Standard Time, like at 11:30. So that means by about quarter to 11, I need to be out the door in my car and on my way down to the airport to pick her up. So that means that all the stuff that I typically do after I'm done recording, including trying to get it uploaded to YouTube and all the happy go lucky stuff that I need to do, is going to be rather truncated because as you know, I mean, I'm a typical man. You leave me alone to my own resources for any length of time, and things get messy. So besides all the stuff that I normally do, of course, I have some cleanup to do before the wife gets home so she doesn't think I'm a total slob, even though I know that it is not going to surprise her in the slightest to find out that I am a total slob. Um, but for tonight's show, there is a couple of things that I wanted to. Oh, Dave, you have to. Are you doing your own? Is that the podcast that you do with Melissa? Make sure that you put the name of the podcast here in the show notes, and talk to me later on in the week, and we can set up some cross promotion stuff. I certainly don't mind promoting other people's podcasts here on the Mac to the Future Go podcast. So, In Touch with iOS. Thank you, Dave. That's the one that that David, who is also going to be at MacStock 2017, July 15th and 16th. I don't have a calendar in front of me, but it's like mid-July in Woodstock, Illinois. This is the third year for this particular show. And if you live anywhere near the Chicago area, you really should plan on going. It's going to be a great time. I can tell you, I've gone to the last 2, and it's all the fun and camaraderie of the Macworld Expo without all the case makers. So you don't have like oodles and oodles of case makers trying to sell you something for your iPhone or your iPad or any of the rest of that stuff. It's mostly now. Otherworld Computing is a major sponsor, so which it only makes sense because they're right there in that neighborhood in Woodstock, Illinois. They are a major sponsor, so I think that they'll have a presence there. But it's not like you're going to be preached to by a bunch of different companies that are trying to sell you something. The people that will be speaking at MacStock, these are people that have a passion for the particular topics that they're there to talk about. And frankly, if you just want to meet a bunch of great people, and and me, of course, you can get there so easy. It's just outside of Chicago. There's lots of inexpensive hotels in the area where the conference is. It's a 2-day conference, and it's on the weekend, of course. And more fun couldn't be had outside of Cupertino. Well, that's a lie. You could probably have a lot of fun in Cupertino. But Max Talk Expo 2017 is an event that if you can make it, you really, really should go. Warren says that his wife won't let him go. I understand, Warren. I mean, I don't know you personally, but just based on our Facebook conversations, I completely understand why your wife won't let you go. Let's see, what else? Marcus says he's too far away in Minneapolis. Really, Marcus? Really? I'm probably going to drive from the Northern Virginia area. I'm going to be spending a little bit of time on the Friday before the conference. I volunteered myself to go back and forth between Chicago and Woodstock, Illinois, to pick people up from, either O'Hare or Midway and bring them out to the site. I did that last year. I did it the year before. I mean, I don't mind it, and it's just a little something that I can give back to the people who have spent a lot of time and a lot of effort. And of course, I'm talking about Mike Potter from the For Mac Eyes Only podcast and Barry Falk, who have not only contributed their time and money, but more importantly, their expertise to put together a conference that is really all about the Mac community. And if you're enjoying this live cast, and even if you're not, it's gonna be a lot of fun. So, and I won't push it anymore tonight, but be there if you can. Eileen, yes, fly into O'Hare. If it's on a Friday, I can probably give you a ride out to Woodstock. But let's get to the stuff that I actually was going to talk about tonight. This whole thing with Mac Stock was kind of a little journey off to the side. Mac Pros have been updated, kinda. It got a little love this week with Apple announcing GPU and CPU upgrades to a line that has languished since 2013. The two main models go from 4 cores to 6 cores on the low end, and from 6 cores to 8 on the high end, and better GPU options for both of them. Oddly enough, neither have Thunderbolt 3 or USB-C ports, so it's kind of a mixed bag to really say that whether or not they were updated. It's basically the same case with slightly better internals, but the big news on this particular point was that Apple also is saying that there's going to be a redesigned Mac Pro in 2018. Now that means anywhere from January 1st all the way out to December 31st, because Apple doesn't really give very accurate timelines. They just say, okay, well, it's going to come eventually, 2018, so that could be any time in that year. But with I don't know if a redesigned Mac Pro will, I guess it's going to depend on what they mean by redesigned. Is it going to have the same kind of modular upgradability that the 2006 to 2012 Mac Pros had? I mean, I'm still rocking a 2010 here, and it's fantastic. I love this machine. And there's a little story. I'm going to go off on a little tangent here. One of my friends at work who knows that I'm a Mac guy is interested in getting a new machine. He wants a Mac Pro, but he doesn't want the 2013. He wants a Mac Pro 5,1, which is the ones that they made from 2010 to 2012. And there is a site, and damn it, I can't remember the name of it, where the guy has, all he sells are Mac Pros and upgrades for existing Mac 12s. Sorry, Mac Pros. So, I was kind of looking at the site, and I'll try to remember to have more details on this next week because it's really kind of cool. I can get a processor upgrade for this 2010 machine here to go from a 2.8 gigahertz 4-core single, Intel Xeon processor to a 3 point blah 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 3.3 something something 6-core processor for I think like $450. I can upgrade the graphics card to something that's a little more modern, and I mean really probably extend the life of this machine for some time. But I'll really need to get the website and the URL, and I'll try to remember to do that this week. Somebody put that in the show notes, please, that I need to do that, because otherwise, brain like a sieve, I'll forget. So Apple is also saying that they're going to design a new Apple Pro display, which should probably take the bad taste out of some people's mouths regarding the LG display that I'm guessing nobody tested next to like an airport device or Wi-Fi, because apparently its shielding was for crap. And when you have a monitor like that, like the LG monitor, and that was a 5K monitor, very, very expensive, and nobody tests it, and this is the monitor that you're putting out to the people that buy your Pro machines, and you've got it on your main display on the page, on Apple's web page, and you're really kind of pushing it hard. And then you've got this disaster where because of poor shielding, it just looks like crap if it's anywhere near a Wi-Fi hotspot. So I guess Apple, and this is what they've done like forever, is kind of going back to creating their own, or at least designing one and having somebody else make it. Because I mean, let's face it, Apple doesn't really make anything anymore. They design it and then contract it out for other people to make it. So we're looking at a new redesigned Mac Pro for next year, a new Apple Pro display, and they said, and this is kind of interesting, a Pro iMac to be released later this year. So, what does that really mean? I know that a lot of the people that use Mac computers in the Pro industry weren't happy with the 2013 Mac Pro, and the ones that didn't switch over to Linux or Windows, a lot of them did go to iMacs. I mean, it's iMacs are a nice machine. So I don't know. What would a Pro iMac have? It would obviously have to have at least, I almost say this with a grain of salt, it would have to have at least 32 gigs of RAM, or at least the ability to have 32 gigs of RAM. And the reason why I kind of hesitated when I said that, it was because of the debacle of the MacBook Pro that was released last year, that maxed out at 16 gigs of RAM. Now, yes, there were very good reasons why it maxed out at 16 gigs of RAM. But if you're a pro and you're willing to spend the extra money to have more RAM, or to have faster storage, or a better GPU, or whatever it is that in your mind makes it a pro level machine, well, it's kind of up to Apple to make something like that available. And if they won't make something like that available, then I don't think they should be too surprised when a lot of the pros abandon the Mac and have gone to other platforms. I mean, what else are they going to do? Now, with all that said, I guess that the only other thing that we're still kind of waiting for is updated Mac Minis, MacBooks, MacBook Air, if they ever do anything with that again, iPad Mini, if they ever do anything with that again, and all the other bits of Apple gear that they've been ignoring for a while. Over here in the comments, Marcus wants to throw M&Ms on the screen. Well, that's going to mess up your screen. It's not going to mess up my screen. So, you want to throw M&Ms, throw M&Ms. But, it'd be much better if you put them in a bag and seal them up and then send them to me because I happen to like M&Ms. Let's see. There is a shared doc we have. We are being recorded. What? Okay, Warren. Oh, great. The pro debate. No, 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 no. Whether or not someone is a pro is really dependent on what they as an individual think of themselves as a pro. I've been doing podcasts for well over 10 years, since 2005, 2006. I don't really consider myself a pro. And I think the results speak for themselves. I do enjoy the process of creating podcasts and creating content for people that have taken the time to listen to the MyMac podcast that Gaz and I do over there at mymac.com, and of course this latest little adventure, the Facebook livecast. And I think, I can't speak for everyone else, but I think if you look at the very first one that I did, and you look at this one here, that there's, I hesitate to say a vast improvement, because again, that's pretty much up to the people that are watching or listening. But I'm certainly a lot more comfortable doing this now than I was for like the first or the second show. So, I guess you could say that kind of makes me a pro, maybe just a little bit. Eileen says that she uses her iMac for video and photo editing, mostly Photoshop, 27-inch souped up graphics card, plenty of RAM, and not Retina. So you've got, I'm guessing, like a 2013 or 2012 27-inch iMac, which are great machines. As a matter of fact, you can pick up one very, very similar to it with a warranty from Otherworld Computing. And, no, they're not sponsoring this or even really the MyMac podcast. But when you're looking to buy a used Macintosh, and I've got a little story with that, about some news along that front as well. If you go through Craigslist or eBay or, any of these other sites, and you're buying it from an individual, you don't necessarily know really what it is you're going to get, or if you're going to really get what it is you're paying for. Well, the nice thing about going with a reputable dealer, and whether it's Apple's refurbs or from someone like OWC, you know who it is you're dealing with. You know that it's a company that's going to be around for a long time. So, if you're looking for used Macs, and, you're not going to get the rock bottom prices that you'll get elsewhere, but you will get a good quality machine with a warranty. Now, breaking that rule myself, I have been on the lookout for a quad-core Mac Mini 2012 for a while. And I've been putting bids on eBay, mostly because it is a little cheaper. And this is not going to be like a main machine. And I'm going to somehow incorporate it in with all this other stuff that I'm doing here, but it's not my main machine. So I didn't or couldn't really afford to spend a ton of money on it. Well, I just found out I recently won an auction for a 2012 Mac Mini, 8 gigs of RAM, two 2.5-inch 1 terabyte spindle drives for like just around $625, which is a really good price for a Mac Mini of that vintage. Most of them go for, in the neighborhood of $750 to $1,000 if you're looking on eBay for these kinds of machines. But however, most of those also already have an SSD and 16 gigs of RAM. So by the time I eventually add or beef it up to 16 gigs of RAM, and maybe, depending on how I use it, put an SSD in it, it'll probably end up costing me about the same as, the other ones that I passed by because I thought they were too expensive. What are you going to do? Okay. So, I mean, we'll see. We'll see how that works out. I'm looking forward to when it comes. I'm hoping I didn't get ripped off, but you never know when you're dealing with eBay or some of these other, Craigslist or some of these other sites where you're dealing with individuals, and the website is basically the arbitrator between yourself and the seller, or from yourself and the buyer if you're actually selling something. But moving away from that, there is one other little thing I want to talk about before I take the break. And that's that Apple seems to be developing their own GPU. In a move that seemed to surprise a company called Imagination, Apple has stopped using their designs for the integrated GPU in their A series of ARM-based processors that they use in all of their iOS devices as well as the Apple Watch. Maybe they thought that they were kind of immune to what Apple typically does with their partners of this type because they had actually bought a small stake in the company. But, I guess the crazy thing is Apple actually had a chance, I think it was last year, to buy the company outright and decided not to do so. Now, I think the main reason why they decided not to buy the company is that Imagination also has several other clients for their tech, though Apple was far and away their biggest customer, which might be why they decided not to take it over. This way, whatever solutions that Apple creates, they don't have to share it or allow others to have the perceived benefits of whatever it is that they choose to make as far as GPUs go for iOS devices and the Apple Watch. An interesting side note will be the inevitable lawsuit that most likely will happen once Apple releases their own solutions away from Imagination. Now, the stories that I've been seeing on this have been kind of sparse in when Apple is going to do that. You figure at this point in the iPhone cycle, and of course we're still talking about the iPhone 7, the next one that comes out, whether Apple calls it the 8 or the 7S or whatever they decide to call it, doesn't really matter. Is it still going to have the Imagination technology while Apple is developing their own GPU, or has Apple gotten far enough along in the process of creating their own GPU that they can go ahead and do it en masse and not even worry about whatever Imagination brings to the table? So, and to this also brings up another question in my mind. I wonder when or if Apple will replace the processor in the Mac with one of their own design. They have the A series processor that they're using in all of their iOS devices. It looks like they've got a GPU solution coming down the road. And for the other main pieces of tech that you find in Mac computers, RAM and SSDs and, just all the bits and pieces. The two that kind of make up the pluses and minuses of the computer is the CPU and the GPU. So if Apple has a CPU, and they do with the A series of ARM-based processors, and they have a GPU, how long will it be before they just they kind of kick Intel to the curb and say, well, okay, we're going to go with this instead. And because, these ARM-based processors are very, very small. So when people talk about, the x86 processors are so much more powerful, it doesn't mean that Apple can't put in multiple ARM chips. to get their Mac computers to the same level of power. And I'm not going to pretend like I'm an expert, but when Apple was using the PowerPC, one of the reasons why PowerPC computers were nearly as fast or just as fast, in some cases even faster, than their x86 comparative products was that the PowerPC was a RISC-based processor, reduced instruction set processor, as compared to x86, which is a CISC-based, and it's CISC-based processor, which is complex instruction set processor. So it took PowerPC chips much fewer steps, if apps were coded correctly, to do the same thing that a CISC-based processor would do in like Windows or other x86-based operating systems at the time. And where that all kind of fell apart was when IBM basically decided that they weren't going to put any major resources into the G5 to make it small enough and not develop so much heat for Macintosh laptops. That was kind of the downfall for PowerPC computing. And what you have to understand from IBM's point of view, and I don't really blame them for doing this, and in a lot of ways, it's worked out well for Apple as well to go to x86, is that when Motorola, IBM, and Apple, that was the AIM alliance, Apple, IBM, Motorola, created the PowerPC consortium, for lack of a better term, Apple was like one of the biggest customers for PowerPC chips. But then they started using them, Motorola and IBM started using them in other devices, mostly standalone terminals, things like, stuff that didn't require a whole lot of power. And they became cheap enough to where they could just kind of toss them in. So, yes, thank you, Marcus. RISC and CISC. Thank you. So, Apple became almost an afterthought in IBM's plans for their RISC-based processors. And because Apple wasn't the biggest customer for them, it just didn't make any sense to IBM to spend a lot of time and to spend a lot of money further developing what Apple called the G5 to put into Macintosh computers or laptop computers. So that's, basically why, or one of the big reasons why Apple ended up going x86. But there's no reason why they can't change again. We're now 11, 12 years into Apple on the x86 platform. And it's, there's absolutely no reason why Apple couldn't make a major switch again. One of the big arguments against it is that having an x86 processor in a Mac computer also makes it very easy to run Windows. Well, I've had Intel-based Macs basically since they came out. And yeah, I had Windows on it for a while. And yeah, sometimes I would go into it and it's like, okay, well, I'm firing up Windows now with Boot Camp or through VMware or Parallels or what have you. And I would spend the first 30 minutes to an hour doing all the Windows updates. And by the time I would get done with all the updates, it was like, why am I even bothering with this? So I eventually took it off. And I think that other than probably a very, very small number of people, there's just not that many that run Windows from their Mac computers. And I don't think Apple would really lose that much by switching to another processor. It would certainly take some time for some of their app developers to recompile their applications for another processor, and whether it's an ARM-based processor or what have you, but it's not like it couldn't be done. It could easily be done. I mean, I remember it wasn't that long ago, I was talking about how Apple should buy AMD and start using AMD processors. And with new computers coming out later this year and next year, there's, and that's still x86. There's no reason why Apple couldn't use AMD processors. But, I mean, we really don't know what Apple's plans are beyond the little bit of, the snippets that they give us each and every time that they make some of these public statements. So we know, what do we know? We know that there's a new Mac Pro of some kind of new design that's coming out next year, according to what Apple has said. We know there's a new display. We know that there's a new Pro level iMac that's coming out later this year. Other than that, we have no idea what Apple's future plans are. But you know what? I think I'm going to stick around for the ride. So, having said that, you know what? I was going to use Ed's ad this week, but I don't seem to have it here, so I'm going to have to do this one instead. Anyway, we will be right back, and when we come back, there was a topic that I picked from Sandra Davis that we will discuss, and some excellent advice from Ed Eisen. So hold on. Are you a new Mac user or an old hand? Wish you could know the ins and outs, keyboard shortcuts, or hidden tips and tricks to make you more efficient using your favorite computer? Hey, it's your lucky day, because Edward Eisen has written a great guide to knowing more about the Mac and the OS that it runs on. It's called This is the Light Side, and it's available through Apple's iBookstore or with Amazon. Better yet, it's not a stuffy old book that gathers dust on the shelf once the next operating system is released, because it's an ebook that you can look at any time you want. It won't get outdated because it's continuously being updated. Information on setting up your new Mac, installing and getting rid of applications, security settings and what to look out for, keyboard shortcuts, some basic app recommendations, how to use Windows on your Mac, if you really want to, that is, advanced topics, searching, using iCloud, and much more. All this for a mere 99 cents. Go to the iBookstore or Amazon and check out Edward Eisen's This is the Light Side. It's the book you want on your virtual shelf. Okay, hey, here we're back. And I need to mute the audio there because it's like just a second behind what it is that I'm saying, and that can be so annoying. For people who don't do podcasts, one of the things that can really, really kill you is audio latency, because the time, like when you speak and you hear what it is that you're saying through your ears, it's instantaneous, or at least as instantaneous as it can be. But when you're dealing with audio gear and audio being taken as an analog source, changed into a digital source, goes through all the guts in your computer, and then comes to your headphones or, however it is you're listening to it, there's going to be that slight delay of, no matter how fast your computer is, there's always going to be that slight delay, and that's called latency. And as little as a quarter of a second, 250 milliseconds, if you're not used to it, you can sound like you're completely drunk because you'll start to talk like this. And it's just, people that work in radio get used to it, and, they train their mind to either ignore it or work with it. But because, I'm not classically trained as a radio person, I've prior to doing podcasts, I never had any experience dealing with this. So even now, some 10 years later, if the delay is too much for me to deal with, then I've just got to kind of turn it off. Like when I do the podcast with Gaz, I'm hearing him and I'm hearing the stuff that I've got going on in the soundboard. But I can't hear myself because I have that turned off because of the latency. So anyway, just something to think about. Now, there was a post over in Mac to the Future from Sandra Davis. And what she had to say was this. First time I've ever had this happen. I was making a donation to my Animal Rescue Society, and thank you for that, Sandra. When I clicked to donate it, it said my Flash player was out of date, and stupid me clicked to update it, and my computer became possessed. I must have gotten malware. I ran a program called Malwarebytes to remove it. My browser now opens on a search called SafeFinder instead of Google search. What can I do to correct all this, please? And Ed Eisen stepped in and gave some really, really good advice. And we're going to go through all of these various steps that Ed told Sandra to do. Number one, when any site asks you for or to download a Flash update, ignore it. Just don't do it. If known legitimate sites ask for Flash, like YouTube, then go directly to Adobe, get adobe.com Flash Player, download it directly from Adobe, and install it from that. Run that installer only. If you got it from any other URL, you most likely have a fake and some malware to go along with it. Thankfully, most Mac malware is benign compared to Windows counterparts. He's ignoring ransomware. So download and install Malwarebytes. That's the one I use too. Run it and let it find and remove the crap, because it will. Quit or force quit Safari. Reopen, but make sure you are holding down the Shift key when you open it. It will open in a blank page rather than the tabs that you had open. Go to Safari Preferences, which is in the Safari menu at the top. In the General tab, make sure the home page is not set to some weird site. Uncheck Open Safe Files. In the Privacy tab, click Manage Website Data and delete cookies and other data that might be related to the offending app. I think Malwarebytes will also collect some of that up. In the Advanced tab, check Show Full Website Address. Don't let it truncate what the URL for the sites that you're going to. Know exactly, and that's actually good advice for anybody. Great. It's you get a little tiny URL instead of the full URL, but then sometimes you don't really know where it is that it's taking you. So in the Advanced tab, check Show Full Website Address. Know exactly where you are and not just the top level of the website. Then reboot. And after you reboot, it's probably not a bad idea to rerun Malwarebytes and see if it finds something else. You never know. Let's see. Marcus Benjamin says that he pronounces it mal, not malware, like malcontent, just being OCD. Warren Sklar says, Pros Pro. I don't even know what that means. Hate that malware. Oh, please. Please, please, please. Malware. Gotta let it go, guys. Unless there's something else, and I don't think there is. I think we've covered pretty much everything that I wanted to cover tonight. I think that's going to do it for the show this evening. As always, thank you all for being here, and if you would like to contact me in relation to the show, I can be reached at GuyGUI at mttfgo.com. That's Guy at mttfgo.com. I'm also on the Twitters. You can find me there as Mac Parrot. Check out the Mac to the Future. Well, I guess you're basically watching it here through Facebook. At least people that are here live. Uh, the Mac to the Future Facebook page. If you're watching this via YouTube or some other method. There's the Mac to the Future website, mttfgo.com. All of the past episodes are there. You can leave comments. You can, it's still, I haven't worked on the site in a while, and I really should. But just seems like there's always other things that are kind of taking up my time. But we will be back next week. I don't know what it is I'm going to talk about yet. I'm sure that something will come to mind. Also, you know what? I almost forgot. Make sure that you also check out, I've talked about it in the past, the mymac.com podcast that I do with Gaz. Each weekend, we have a blast doing that show. And as compared to this show, Gaz gives me that safety net that I don't get here. So if I screw up here, it's kind of my fault. Whereas if I screw up on the My Mac podcast, it's still my fault, but I can blame other people. So, yeah, that's a win-win. So, thank you all for joining me tonight, and I really appreciate it. And we shall see you next week. Come on.